Who is in? Who is out for the national team this summer? Will the Open Cup get boring with only Major League Soccer teams remaining? And is there an equivalent in America to Spurs winning the Europa League? That and more on Friday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround. We cover the world's favorite game from the world's favoriteest country. My name's Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. We come to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. How you doing, Mr. Davis?
I appreciate you wish casting every show when you say the world's favoriteest country. I appreciate you trying to make those things happen again, Rob.
You have to speak things into existence.
That's right.
In this world, just like Morning Kickaround with 10,000 subscribers. Let's make that a reality.
Whoa, yes, let's do it. Let's go. Let's go. If you know somebody who hasn't subscribed, go and lightly tap them on the cheek and say, "What are you doing?" I don't want any violence. I'm just
Excuse me, highly intelligent and good-looking sir. You look like someone who needs to subscribe to a morning American soccer show.
Or madam, or whatever, person, a fellow citizen of the world. Please subscribe.
Yes, exactly. So subscribe, doesn't cost you a darn thing. And then if you want to continue and elevate your support of the program, become a member. We've got a handful of members so far, and the more we work on there, the better the show grows, and the more stable footing Jason and I become, and hopefully work towards making this a central part of the American soccer conversation. We got a nice thing going, and we are just looking to grow and really, become a centerpiece of American soccer media. And to do so, you subscribe to the channel, become a member, and when you become a member, get early access to videos. You will be able to have priority commenting. You'll be able to send and receive gifts, but you also get access to the Discord channel, which is getting kind of fun.
Absolutely. It's getting great. It's lots of, Rob asked me to create a local channel over on the Discord so he can talk about Oakland County without messing up the other, Premier League channel or MLS channel or whatever.
Yeah, I figured, I enjoy talking that stuff, and there's a handful of MK Ultras that have their USL2 team or their Midwest Premier League team or NPSL team, but I'm sure people with a more of a macro view of the game might not want that cluttering it up. But lots of different channels on the Discord. Join in there. You can find us as a podcast. Search for Morning Kickaround on your favorite audio platform. You can also support outside of the YouTube sphere, coffee.com/morning kickaround. You can do a one-time donation, set up a regular scheduled thing. And, I think we need to get more specific on the goals that we're setting, because I think we set a general $1,000 goal with, covering the cost of setting up the program. But I think we might need to get more specific of like individual goals that we need to help us progress and become sustainable and maybe grow from a 3-day show.
Okay, well, let's do that. Let's put our heads together and try to figure out what that might be. You're putting me on the spot. I don't have a number for you, Rob. What do you want me to say?
Well, I know. I was just saying, you agree. Like, let's itemize it a little bit more. Break it down, get more granular, and show the listeners and the audience what we do need to, elevate the program. One last note before we get into our segments: you can follow us on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. I'm ready for some Friday segments. How about you, Jason?
Let's go. Let's do it.
All right. Long balls. Here we go. Long ball number one here on Friday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Big news this week. The United States men's national team released their summer roster of players, some new exciting faces, but also some large names on the team sheet omitted from this. Jason, I know we'll get to the Christian Pulisic absence, the explanation for that. has created quite a bit of conversation, spanning from not a big deal to the worst thing ever. We'll break that down later. But here in long balls, maybe we want to talk about kind of like the position groupings and see who we might want to see take part in this summer's national team activities.
Yeah, we're going to open up the question of Pulisic dodging this tournament later on in the show. But for the moment, what stands out to me is, and there's a highlighted name, it's because he's in the picture. There's Serginho Dest. He returns to the team after his long injury absence. Of course, we all remember what happened in Trinidad with the red card and the bad behavior. So let's hope we get good Serginho Dest in this tournament. He's one of the few sort of like very prominent U.S. men's national team players that's in this group. So I think there's some pressure on him to perform, and that goes beyond the Trinidad thing or even coming back from injury. Also in the defender group, Chris Richards, who comes off the FA Cup victory. Oh, Matt Turner, also an FA Cup champion as a backup in the final. And I know that ahead of this camp, Mauricio Pochettino kind of fired a shot across the Matt Turner bow and said, he needs to be playing more if he wants to be the number one goalkeeper in 2026. Or saying it is an open competition and in intimating that Matt Turner needs more playing time. So that's something to watch for because you got two friendlies and then you got the Gold Cup, Rob. So maybe Patrick Schulte gets an opportunity. Maybe Zach Steffen gets an opportunity. Matt Freese is here. I think he's going to be the player cut when this group goes from 27 to 26, but I'm glad he's getting recognized for what he's doing at NYCFC.
Without going in too hard a detail on it, of those other goalies, who is going to put up the biggest challenge to Turner, do you think, just off the top of your head?
I think that Zach Steffen has been too inconsistent. His career has taken a weird turn. There was a moment when we thought he might elevate into the number one spot, obviously left off the World Cup team. I think at the time, Greg Berhalter's thinking was we don't need a distraction of who the number one is. Matt Turner's the number one. I don't know that I see
That's
Zach
weird
Steffen.
logic still to me, but go ahead. Sorry.
I got you. I don't think I see Zach Steffen elevating back into that number one position, although it's of the moment. And what I hope Pochettino is bringing to the table here is this mentality of it doesn't matter what you did last camp. It doesn't matter what you did in the camp before. It doesn't matter what you did last year. What matters is where you are right now. And some of that will be dictated by your club form. Not all of it. It can't all be dictated by club form, but some of it. And I think that, Patrick Schulte's playing week in and week out. Zach Steffen's playing week in and week out, and they may have a leg up on Matt Turner. I would put Schulte slightly ahead of Steffen to answer your question.
Defenders here, obviously we talked about Serginho Dest. I think that almost in my head balances out the disappointment that some of the prominent players aren't here. I want to see what Dest looks like, because when Anthony Robinson and Serginho Dest were on the field at the same time, this team was dynamic in a way that it was not without at least one of the fullback I mentioned. But so hopefully we get to see a good amount of minutes from Dest, but also on the defenders list is Max Arfsten from Columbus, Alexander Freeman, who has been getting some buzz. And I know some hardcore nerds were really excited to see the son of the NFL Hall of Famer, All-Star at the very least, Antonio Freeman here. He's playing in Orlando.
Yes.
Freeman. And then Dwan Jones, Mark McKenzie, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, and Miles Robinson round up that defender group.
Yeah, let me give you my excitement levels. Excited about Max Arfsten. I think he's a very good player. I like what he brings going forward. You talked about maybe lacking some of that in previous camps. Max Arfsten's going to get up the field if he plays. And I actually think he's probably the guy in line to start at left back because I don't see another one here that is an obvious choice to play in that position with Jedi Robinson absent. And by the way, the explanation on Jedi Robinson is that he does have some issue that he is dealing with, that there is that he needs to be kind of he needs to take care of himself, but he also maybe needs to get something taken care of in the offseason after a long year at Fulham, where he was an excellent performer. So disappointed that he's not here, and it does bring down the whole quality of the roster in addition to those other names we talked about. But when you don't have Weston McKennie, when you don't have Tim Weah, when you don't have Gio Reyna, when you don't have Christian Pulisic, then, it is less striking that Jedi Robinson is not there. Midfielders, I guess we'll move on to that. I was going to say, otherwise I'm not really, the rest of these names are kind of like, oh, we kind of know them. I think Richards obviously has had a very good year at Crystal Palace, and so I'm okay with him being in there and being a starter. Whether Tim Ream is the other starter, his partner in central defense, is kind of an open question. He's the only left-footed guy in the team that can play that position. Sort of obviously, I don't know if we could see a Chris Richards, Mark McKenzie pairing. Maybe we do. Maybe Chris Richards switches over to the left side. Midfielders, Tyler Adams is there. That's the anchor. Sebastian Berhalter, definitely getting some love because of what he's been doing with Vancouver and helping them to their great start in Major League Soccer this season. We got Johnny Cardoso, could be on the move. Atleti apparently is eyeing Johnny Cardoso, which is interesting. We knew that Tottenham was in the mix for him, so we'll see what happens. Luca de la Torre, Diego Luna, everybody's excited about that and his big balls. Malik Tillman, I skipped Jack McGlynn. That's a Philadelphia guy who gets a look. Or no, he's Jack McGlynn's the guy who moved on to Houston. Excuse me.
Yes,
Malik
sir.
and Sean Zawatsky, another Columbus player. It's a mixed bag in the midfield. Malik Tillman's got a lot to prove. Diego Luna, we know what he can do, but is he good enough at this level? Kind of moving up from the January camp. Luca, I don't know about it anymore. He's okay, he's passable, but he doesn't wow me. Johnny Cardoso always kind of underwhelms me at the international level. I don't know if Berhalter's going to play a lot, so it is kind of a mixed bag in midfield.
Yeah, who you leaning on here other than the obvious pick of Tyler Adams? You don't want to grind him down because I think he put in a lot of minutes in the second half of the season for Bournemouth. So, his availability isn't always guaranteed. So who would be the other midfielders in this group that we'd want to see? I think Diego Luna is obviously high on folks' list. And I think just because of the novelty factor, I know a lot of people probably want to see Sebastian Berhalter, but I would like to see, I know you get frustrated by him because he shows out for club, hasn't really put anything on film in a national team jersey, but I guess I'm hoping to see Johnny Cardoso, perform well. Obviously, I want everyone to perform well, but Johnny Cardoso, if he could step out from the shadows and do his thing that he's obviously, performing well at the club level, I'd really like to see that translated to the national team. I think he could be a solid piece there. But so Adams, Berhalter, Luna, Torre, any of those MLS guys?
I mean, again, Diego Luna is exciting. He has been much more of a goal-scoring player than a facilitator at RSL this season. I think some of that is RSL and their just lack of solid goal-scoring options, but he can create something out of nothing. I don't know if that means he's a starter. It may mean that he is an off-the-bench kind of player. But if you look at this group and you're trying to find the creative ability, Malik Tillman can do it, but does not bring it to the national team on a regular basis. And maybe this is his last chance to prove it. Outside of him, there's not a lot of creativity here. So maybe Diego Luna has to be on the field by default. And I'm going to shout out to Orius Dosh, who says, we're calling Sebastian Berhalter Seabass. Are we calling him Seabass? Is that who we're talking
about? Seabass is fun.
I don't know.
Seabass.
It's a Seabass. So we're calling him Seabass. Okay. Forwards. Brendan Aronson listed as a forward, which probably means he's playing wide because, again, no Pulisic, no Weah. Patrick Agyemang, center forward. Fowler and Balogun, center forward. Damian Downs, center forward. Quinn Sullivan, another player who's going to play wide more than likely because of those absences. Brian White, center forward. Haji Wright, who can play wide or centrally, probably better centrally, but plays, I think, in a two-striker system there at Coventry City, or did this season. So, again, it's a mixed bag. No Ricardo Pepi, still injured. Josh Sargent left off, and Berhalter said, excuse me. Wow, flashbacks. Mauricio Pochettino said that was a football decision. That was a soccer choice that Josh Sargent was left off pretty much because Mauricio Pochettino didn't think he was good enough for this team or the right fit for this team, I think is probably the best way to look at it.
I'll have to look at it closer, but I mean, off the top of your head, I know they finished higher, but Haji Wright and Josh Sargent both scored a good amount of goals in the championship. Obviously, the same level, same league. From the bits of those two American strikers that you saw, was there any between those two, between Haji Wright and Josh Sargent, that would say one was obviously better than the other?
I do think it's the versatility that Haji Wright brings. I mean, Sargent has played wider for Norwich too. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. Sargent is sort of a all-around forward who doesn't do anything great. Now, Haji Wright isn't great either, But then there's this point, right? Matthew suggesting that maybe part of this is that Josh Sargent just doesn't show up. He doesn't play well. He did have a goal ruled out, I think, in the Nations League on an offside call that was very, very tight. And we thought maybe he was going to break his long streak of not scoring for the national team, but obviously it was ruled out, and he still hasn't scored since. Since, Robert? When in the last time Josh Sargent scored a goal for the U.S. men's national team?
It was pre-COVID. I think it was 2018 or 19.
2019. 2019 is the last time he scored for the U.S. men's national team. So that could be the explanation right there.
We will return to the Pulisic element later on the show, but we're going to move on before long ball number 2. Shout out to Matt in the chat. He just commented about Josh Sargent. Got to meet him in Flint, Michigan on Wednesday. He came up and said hi. So thanks for tuning in, Matt. And thank you for saying hi on an otherwise miserable wet Wednesday in mid-Michigan. But moving on to long ball number 2 here for Friday. Open Cup getting a little boring. The Pittsburgh Riverhounds, the last non-MLS team involved in the U.S. Open Cup 2025. So the quarterfinalists, the matchups are Minnesota versus Chicago Fire, San Jose Earthquakes versus Austin, Philadelphia Union versus the Red Bulls, and Nashville versus DC United to be played on July 8th and 9th. Can you dig into these matchups and find anything interesting, or is the interest level lost now that the interleague matchups are no longer with us?
Oh, man. I think it kind of looks boring. I think I hate to say that. I mean, I guess maybe I'm not giving enough credit to the history of some of these teams in the competition, right? DC United traditionally, the last time they won was 2013, which, by the way, they finished dead last in Major League Soccer. I think the worst season in MLS history to that point, and I don't know that anybody's had a worse season since. So they have a history in this competition, and they get Nashville. Chicago obviously has a proud history in this competition, and I do think it seems as though, although they did roll out a couple of reserves and they didn't play every starter against New England in the last round in Providence, it does feel like Greg Berhalter wants to win this thing, that this is a priority for the Fire. Maybe that's the logic being we've got to learn how to win things again, like as a culturally within the club. It'd be good if the Fire could put a piece of silverware in the trophy case. And obviously this buys you entry into the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which is not nothing. So there's that. I think it's interesting. I saw some comments from Bruce Arena. When he was with the Galaxy, he didn't care about the Open Cup. He gave 0 F's about the Open Cup. Am I cursing on this show? I don't know where we are on cursing on Morning Kick Around. Anyway, cover your ears, kids. Earmuffs. He did not even travel a couple of times to play, I think what was at the time the North Carolina Railhawks in the Open Cup. And it was like this incredibly like disrespectful thing that Bruce did. And then his team would lose and he'd be like, whatever, I don't care. And this week, with the Quakes into the quarterfinals of this competition, he said, when I was the Galaxy coach, the Open Cup didn't matter to me because our goal was always to win the MLS Cup title. Like that, we were supposed to be champions of the league. That was the standard with the LA Galaxy. The Quakes don't have that standard. And so for him, he's like, I've readjusted my viewpoint on this tournament because we're not MLS Cup champion quality, MLS Cup champion quality team in San Jose right now. He basically said, we're not good enough to win MLS Cup, so why wouldn't we go after the Open Cup? Which is, I think, makes sense. You know, you think about a Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup this year, Rob. They were never going to be in the hunt for anything in the Premier League. They were not going to win the league. They were not going to be a Champions League team. They were not going to be a Europa League team. This is what they had. And they went and they won it, and good for them. And that's kind of where Bruce is positioning the Quakes, which is funny in a parity type of league like Major League Soccer where 9 teams will make the playoffs.
Some comments coming in. Nicholas Murray saying, I think it's interesting because this is the only chance to win their team. A la Crystal Palace most years. Mike Thomas, he thinks that Union will lose their 4th Open Cup final. Always chasing, never reaching. So that's a similar thing to Crystal Palace as well. But yeah, how many of these teams have a realistic shot at winning the league, though? I mean,
Philly looks really good. Philly looks really good in the Eastern Conference right now. I mean, I don't know that they're seeing this as a distraction. Probably not. I mean, I think they've managed this fairly well. Obviously, getting Pittsburgh. No offense to the Riverhounds, who we were certainly rooting for, but getting Pittsburgh in the round of 16 was a nice draw for them. Like a good draw for them because it allowed them to kind of handle their business at home against the lower division side before they go into this game against New York, who hasn't looked great this season in MLS. I mean, I think Minnesota's got aspirations of things. Chicago's a work in progress. They want to go win it. We talked about Bruce and his attitude with the Quakes. Austin's got a new head coach, and they've done some decent things. And, I don't know. It'd just be nice to win something, I think, for a fairly young club. I think the same probably goes for Nashville. I mentioned DC United. Troy Lesesne might be coaching for his job in the league, right? That's probably the most desperate team out of all of these in terms of their league position and needing this to bring some good vibes is DC United.
Indeed, this quarterfinals, as you can see on the screen, July 8th and 9th, we'll see who is the 2025 Open Cup semifinalists after that round. Moving on to long ball number 3 here on Friday edition of Morning Kick Round. It's the Fab Four. It is our look ahead to the weekend of the 4 games in North American soccer that we think might be worth carving out some time to take in. We'll go from Jason and myself, producer Jenny, and then members. You will get the 4th of the Fab Four. So members of Morning Kicker on the MK Ultras, put in your suggestions for the chat pick for the Fab Four. But Jason, take it away.
I'm gonna bring up something I'm sure my friend Nicholas Murray, who is active in our chat, will appreciate. I'm picking a USL Championship game for the first of the Fab Four, and I am picking the Hail Caesar Derby. We were going back and forth before the show whether we were going to call it a derby or a derby. We are calling it a derby because that's clearly, that we're talking about a rivalry. This isn't really one, but it does have some common, it has a common element here, right? What is a common thing between Detroit City FC and the Charleston Battery?
One coach, Ben Perman, I believe you're referring to.
That's right. One coach, Ben Perman, who has steadily made his way up the ranks in American soccer coaching. I appreciate Ben Perman's story because he's not a guy that you knew from his playing career. Right. He didn't have a 10-year professional career. And, he's not Dax McCarty, who everybody thinks might make a good coach one day. He's not sort of moving. He's not Steve Cherundolo with a national team resume. Like, he's not one of these guys. He's not a foreign guy, obviously. He's American. He was, what was he at the time that he was coaching Detroit City? He was also an assistant coach at Michigan State University, if I'm remembering this correctly.
You got it right.
And that's also when he got the Caesar nickname from the Detroit City faithful when they were still an amateur side before they went professional. He then parlayed that success in Detroit into a job in Memphis, where he had some success in the USL Championship with Memphis 901. RIP Memphis 901. They no longer exist. And Ben got out of Memphis probably at the right time, knowing that maybe that wasn't the best place for him. Lands in Charlotte. And what is he doing in Charlotte? He's got Charlotte in first place in the Eastern Conference. And they get to play a Detroit City team that's actually having a decent start to the season. 10 games played, 17 points, 4th place in the Eastern Conference right now. I don't think Charleston's lost. I don't think they've dropped any points for a while now. 21 points from 9 matches. They're plus 12. Ben Perman, I really hope that Ben Perman gets a chance to coach at the MLS level one day. And I hope he can break that glass ceiling that is a coach coming through that kind of path, getting a chance to coach abroad, maybe even, Rob. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but if I can see it happening in this moment, in this timeline, Ben Perman might be the guy.
Good shout there for DCFC versus Charleston for our first Fab Four game. Number 2, my pick. I'm going to go with a Charlotte versus Columbus Crew. Both teams kind of going in opposite directions. Columbus Crew was one of my favorite teams to watch in Major League Soccer, as is. Charlotte had a decent start to the season, but are in a bad way. They drew, they went out of the Open Cup midweek and then had 3 MLS losses in a row before that. And these two teams met in early May, with Columbus coming out with a 4-2 win. So I think we're going to see either a continuation of, upward trajectory for Columbus, continuous slide for Charlotte.
Yeah,
And
you
just,
gotta
there was a lot of goals in the last matchup. So I think it could provide some storylines and an exciting watch.
you gotta wonder here. Now this is not maybe the game that everything hinges on, but because Columbus is good and everybody recognizes how good Columbus is.
Yeah.
But this is at home in Charlotte, where there's been excitement. I don't know what the ticket sales look like for this game. I don't know how much of a draw, an away draw Columbus is. I don't think they're putting 65,000 in Bank of America Stadium for this one, but they should
Not
have
every
a
week.
good crowd. They should have a solid number of people in the building. Dean Smith, he had some moments, he had some good things, he did some he can sort of consolidated some strengths of this team, but man, it has gone bad pretty quickly. And I don't know. I don't think we have a sense yet. Now he's their second coach. So they didn't hesitate to fire the first guy when things were not good. You wonder if maybe Dean Smith's job is on the line if he cannot turn this around. And they're in a playoff spot right now, but they're barely hanging on to one. And they had a lot of promise coming in the year, and they obviously spent the money on Wilfred Zaha. And what's going on here?
Yeah, for context of how bad it has gotten in Charlotte, their last league win was April 19th. Their last victory was in the Open Cup against North Carolina FC, but they've got 5 Major League Soccer losses in a row. So sliding a little bit there in Carolina. Third pick of the Fab Four here on Friday. Producer Jenny singled out Philadelphia versus Inter Miami.
I mean, that's an obvious one, right? That one has got storylines on storylines because Philly is obviously in a good moment. They just reached the quarterfinals of the Open Cup. They've started life under Bradley Carnell, playing very good soccer and scoring goals. And did anybody have them at first place after 14 matches in your predictions for the season? I don't know that I did. Right there with Cincinnati and Columbus as the best teams in the East. Meanwhile, Inter Miami has they've only won 2 of their last 7. They've given up 20 goals in those games. They've got all these complaints coming from Lionel Messi about refereeing. I actually wrote about this on my newsletter. Jason Davis, Soccer Eagle. Go look for it on Google. You'll find it. Subscribe to my newsletter. It'd be nice if people read what I'm writing because I haven't written like this in a while. But I obviously thought I also think it's interesting the way that sort of Miami's become the bad guy, the focal point of negative energy from MLS fans. People resent who they are and what they've done. And there's some schadenfreude in how their play is suddenly not delivering results. And I think a lot of people are kind of like pointing and laughing and doing a Nelson from The Simpsons at Inter Miami right now.
I mean, I said it up until, for the last couple months that of the teams that started off the season in the elite, top positions, that Inter Miami was probably the closest to the edge of the table and falling off, and hasn't been a complete fall off, but pretty darn close. I mean, losing 5 of 7 is pretty big fall.
We love a boom or bust. I think we love a boom and bust story because look, if you're like, oh, look how great they are, and look at these Barcelona guys coming together to recapture the magic, and they set a points record last year, and maybe 2025 is going to be the year when they bring the league title to Miami and lead into the year when they expect to open their stadium. I think that's coming. They're talking about signing Messi to an extension. I mean, he's 37 years old. Is that really? Do we think that's going to work out? And now here is the collapse, right? The bust part of this, because you put all your eggs in some very old baskets, and those baskets are falling apart, Rob.
The last Inter Miami game I saw, I had a kind of a thought creep into my head. Is this season really going to be where we just see these favorite players of many people around the world just become too old in front of our eyes? Like Busquets, Alba, who also signed an extension, which was surprising. And Suarez, he got them to that supporter shield last year, but he does not look like the same player. And one of my favorite all time. And it's like, is MLS the place where these guys died?
Yeah.
I sure hope that's not the case.
When you're that age, things work until they don't work anymore, right? It's not.
And then
there's no spectrum. It's like, oh, it's going okay. It's going okay. Everything works. Oh, everything's falling apart. My joints don't work. My muscles don't work. I can't run at all anymore. My energy levels are collapsing. Like all of those things, you're wringing the towel completely dry. And Mascherano's not the guy for this. That's the other part. I mean, the
Yeah, a heavy
storyline
lift. This
here,
is a heavy lift, right? Someone they dig into the experience. Where's the experience?
part of the reason why people are pointing and laughing if they resent Miami and the messy attention and the breaking of the rules in the past and some of Jorge Mas's public, persona things that he does. He's easy not to like Jorge Mas. This is Lionel Messi's team, right? Suarez, Alba, Busquets, Ustari, Mascherano, whoever their GM is now, the guy that they brought over that is a friend of Lionel Messi's. This is Lionel Messi's club. Mas ceded control, Beckham ceded control to Lionel Messi, and now it's on him, and it's fascinating to watch what's going on. And maybe they do find a way to come back into this, and maybe they don't collapse completely, but they certainly aren't the team from last year.
Fab four of the weekend almost complete, but the fourth pick from the MK Ultras, it looks like we have from USL League One, MK Ultras picked it. Forward Madison versus Portland Hearts of Pine. Both teams have lots of exciting elements to them. Forward Madison, one of the best marketed teams in lower league American soccer. Portland Hearts of Pine, one of the best stories of the early rounds of the US Open Cup. Had some great crowds and just like the huge buildup to a team. One of the best this year. One of the best stories.
We had a great U.S. Open Cup moment with Portland Hearts of Pine this year. These are two of the best imaged teams. I mean, I know it's not really what matters. It's a soccer. Who cares? But, we like hits. We like style. We like the way that clubs kind of set themselves up. And Forward Madison set the standard for this in lower division soccer in America. And now Portland Hearts of Pine have come along and are doing incredible things as well. I still don't have any Portland Hearts of Pine gear. I don't know how I haven't figured out how to get my hands on some. Really need to figure that out.
Wink, wink.
And as you said, I mean, Portland has some excitement, some energy. When we did our attendance video on USL, had some comments after the fact that said, hey, Portland Hearts of Pine, they've sold out, right? They've done really well. This game obviously is in Madison, but that is interesting part of the story that Portland Hearts of Pine has taken sort of Maine by storm and is making waves across American soccer.
So Madison versus Portland, Philly versus Miami, Charlotte versus Columbus, and DCFC versus Charleston are the Fab Four of the weekend. If you're watching this now and haven't hit subscribe yet, what are you waiting for? It doesn't cost you a darn thing. Don't get a single spam email, but you do help us and you help the MK Ultras grow. It doesn't cost you a darn.
Sorry, that was my fault. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
That was a new one. New production elements, something that your support can help us with. If you want to take it past the subscription level, you can become a member for $3.99 a month. You can directly help this production, help the team grow, and get lots of benefits such as early access to videos and access to the MK Ultras Discord. You can follow us on social media at MKickground, X, Instagram, Blue Sky. Write us a note at morningkickground@gmail.com. Have you read all those manifestos yet?
I'm working my way through. I've got 6 or 7 manifestos left to read.
And you can also, if you are a podcast listener, look for Morning Kickground on your favorite podcast app. And then if you want to support us financially outside of YouTube, coffee.com/morningkickground. All right, let's take a quick breath and come right back with the hottest topic of the day right here on Morning Kickground. Hot topic here on Morning Kick Around, Friday, May 23rd. I'm Robert. He's Jason Davis. Christian Pulisic skipping the Gold Cup for rest. Is this a big deal or not? Opinions seem to be all the way from it's not a big deal, no one remembers the Gold Cup, let him rest now, all the way to folks like Jeff Carlisle saying that this is the worst case scenario, and Alexi Lala saying that, Messi can play a million games. Why can't Pulisic? Yeah. Where should we land here? Christian skipping this summer's national team, big deal or appropriate?
Okay. In terms of that argument that Messi plays a lot, why can't Pulisic show up for his national team? I do, as much as I am in the camp that I would prefer to have the best possible team right now, working with Mauricio Pochettino, because the World Cup is not that far away and the United States does not have competitive opportunities to test themselves between now and the World Cup outside of this tournament. People are different. Like, people have different energy levels and body types and things about them, just because Lionel Messi can do what he does. And let's remember that Lionel Messi runs
He's one of one.
very, very little. Yeah, he's one of one, and he doesn't run. Lionel Messi sprints, 4 or 5 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
It is different for Christian Pulisic. All right, this is not an excuse. I'm not trying to build an excuse in here. I just want to point out that everybody's different, right? At the same time, again, as I said, I do not like that Pochettino's not going to have this time with with what is even close to an A squad. Some of that, though, is out of his control. Weston McKennie, Tim Weah, Juve doesn't have to release them. They'll release them. They're not. That is not something Mauricio Pochettino can do anything about. Same thing for Giovanni Reina, despite the fact that nobody thinks he should be sticking around at Dortmund next season. He still cannot be involved in this. We also have Alejandro Zendejas, who Pochettino talked about yesterday during his Zoom presser, that they considered Zendejas, but Club America plays in that playoff against LAFC for a spot in the Club World Cup, and if Club America wins, then they go to the Club World Cup, and Zendejas would not be available. So why put him on this roster?
I was going to say, I like this comment. D Life HD. I remember when Landon took some time off and missed the World Cup.
Yeah, Jurgen Klinsmann did not respond well to Christian Pulisic asking for time off.
Christian, as new agey as he was at times, Klinsmann didn't respect the mental health break.
Do you? I guess this is the question, right? And so this the framing of this is fascinating to me, because here in white, this is from Taylor Twellman's X account, but here in white you can see what Matt Crocker said about Christian Pulisic in the roster release article over on US Soccer's website. Christian and his team, I'm assuming his team is Christian's in like personal team, not AC Milan.
Managers,
it's not 100% clear. Christian and his team approached the federation and the coaching staff about the possibility of stepping back this summer, given the amount of matches he has played in the past 2 years at both the club and international level with very little break. After thoughtful discussions and careful consideration, we made the collective decision that this is the right moment for him to get the rest he needs. The objective is to ensure he's fully prepared to perform at the highest level next season. Now, look, when you have a golden goose, and for lack of a better way of describing him, Christian Pulisic is U.S. Soccer's golden goose, I do think you have to take care with him. But, I mean, it's a good point, Rob, that Landon Donovan said, hey, I need a mental break, and he got punished for it. Whereas Christian Pulisic is saying, I guess I'm tired. And they're like, yeah, sure, bud. Go take some time off. It's totally fine that you don't want to be with the national team right now. This is star treatment. Let's not pretend otherwise. Jedi Robinson, according to Pochettino, literally actually does have a physical ailment that is preventing him from showing up for this camp. Nobody else is being allowed to take a break because they played a lot. Now, some of these guys didn't play a lot, and maybe they don't have that excuse. Yunus Musa, by the way, did say he has a personal thing. Pochettino did not disclose what that was. So I guess you could argue that Musa is more in the Landon Donovan category than in the Christian Pulisic category. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to be mad at Christian. I'm really not. I don't know if I can get to that place of being mad at Christian Pulisic the way that some people seem to be. But I am upset that it feels like we're wasting chances to get better before the World Cup next year.
Yeah, I think the onus really changed. We talked about it not too long ago when with the Club World Cup, that was going to add caveats to the selection, and then with the World Cup next year, that adds caveat to the selection. And then Gold Cup, I mean, it's almost a given that it would be like a B+ sort of a team. It would be Gold Cup rosters are always a bit of a mixed bag, but it got elevated with how badly Copa America went.
Right.
And the fact that there's not a lot of competitive stuff
Nations League. Nations League.
So it really put a strange light on the importance of the Gold Cup. So if those bad results hadn't happened, I don't think people even maybe get
Absolutely.
nearly as
Absolutely.
upset about it. I
If
think it's
they had
just
played
purely
better,
because of the quirky nature of the remaining schedule.
if they had played better at the Nations League, I wouldn't be as worried about this team. But I haven't seen. I'm being told, hey, trust Pochettino. He knows what he's doing. Does he? He's never done it at the international level. He's had some success at the club level, and I think he's a smart soccer coach. But I've also seen elements or evidence that maybe he doesn't have a handle on exactly what he needs to do to get this team to play good soccer. Because I still go back to Yunus Musa being deployed as a wide player and being a black hole and adding nothing to the team, and just wonder, like, in terms of the ball going to him and just going nowhere after that. I don't know. Like, why should I trust in that at this point? And if we can't trust that he's got a handle on this, why wouldn't he call in the best possible team that he can? And look, and I guess maybe one of the other tensions here is, could Pulisic have been called in, not play a ton, or only be used in certain circumstances? Maybe, I mean, obviously training is still taxing, but maybe you manage his training levels. Why does he have to not be here at all? I think is a question.
Well, I think it is a little concerning because I didn't really see this in some of the conversation regarding his absence, but in Taylor Twellman's tweet here talks about a hip injury being the reason for that, which
Yeah.
would be concerning because that's the sort of thing, like it's a chronic hip injury that's a little bit scary in my opinion, for just the individual level. But going back to your discussion about Pochettino and the outlook on this Gold Cup and really what it means. Um, we forget about the Gold Cup a lot of the time. It's in the rearview mirror. Obviously, you remember the U.S. going to like the quarterfinals of a World Cup way stronger than you remember if the U.S. wins a Gold Cup.
I
And,
mean, I
and
remember failure in the Gold Cup. I remember Bob Bradley losing his job because of a Gold Cup final against Mexico. I remember '07 and Benny
that
Feilhaber beating Mexico with a full volley. Like, what, though, I remember those games. I remember those tournaments, Rob. I mean, some of them obviously. Look, one of the things about the Gold Cup is people say, well, it's not as important anymore because there's no Confederation Cup berth on the line. But again, this is the last competitive tournament or anything the United States will play in before the World Cup. It's a different kind of Gold Cup for that very reason. For that reason. And I mean, I don't know. So coming back to what Taylor posted to his social media, you mentioned the chronic hip injury. Okay, if he does have that, of course he needs to take care of it. And if resting through this period gets him to be completely healthy for the World Cup, that's more important than him being in this team, right? And so if
yeah,
that's true, and I can only take Taylor's word for it, and he says word is very,
that's not even sources.
that's not specific. Word is. And what interests me is that it feels like US Soccer put this squarely on Christian Pulisic, as Taylor frames it here. US Soccer putting this on CP, make no mistake about it. Which is, and again, choosing to put a statement in the release about the roster. He's the only player that gets mentioned, only absence that gets mentioned as to what happened. Crocker's statement is there, and it feels like they're sort of apologizing to anybody who maybe was expecting to see Christian Pulisic, maybe bought tickets for games, whatever it is. Like, this is our star. He's not here. Don't blame us. We wanted him to play, but he asked, right? He asked not to be here. He declined to call up. That's essentially what they're saying. Right.
Yeah.
And then Taylor Twellman says word is his hip injury is chronic and needs the summer to figure it out. Again, if that's true, fine. Take the summer. But by saying that, by putting that out there, Taylor is also shifting blame away from Pulisic. Now it's his hip that's to blame, not Pulisic himself for choosing not to play. I'm just tired. Because I don't know that a lot of fans, and I have seen plenty of people extend their understanding to Christian Pulisic. I'm actually kind of surprised by how many fans are like, yeah, this makes sense. Rest him. And maybe that's because he has a reputation for being fragile and we want to see him at the World Cup next year. But in a general sense, Rob, people do not like it when players turn down international call-ups. It gets you a reputation as a malcontent, as a problem, as somebody who is not loyal to your cause. And that's a hard stink to get rid of.
I really think this is a logic versus an emotion sort of reaction. I think Jeff Carlisle in his ESPN FC piece put who was definitely he literally said this is worst case scenario, because I think with the Nations League failure, I think mentally there was an assumption like, well, at least we have the Gold Cup to figure it out. And then so maybe the Gold Cup doesn't have all the pieces. So when is it that the team will figure it out? And then if the Gold Cup goes poorly with a team that doesn't necessarily reflect what will be at the World Cup next year, like what do followers of the team really have to hang on? Like I said it, after the Nations League failure, like if the Gold Cup doesn't go well, like what do we hold on to? Like what do we even like hang on to for that 9 months until the biggest tournament there is in the sport happens?
There's a couple of different things here. One of them is just being a fan and being concerned that your team is not going to perform well because you want them to win, right? I just want my team to win, and this is not giving me a confidence that they're going to be good in the World Cup next year, which is what we all center our soccer lives around. I mean, maybe more than most fans around the world, particularly in Europe and maybe South America, although South America is probably more in line with this. We are national team fans. Like this is a national team fan culture, at least the Anglo speakers, I think, in the US. I mean, it's changed a bit. Club has become more important, MLS and people who love the Premier League and things like that. But my entry point to loving soccer as an adult was the US men's national team, 2002, the run to the quarterfinals. Like this we and of course we're all looking for US soccer, American soccer, to be validated by the success of our men's national team in the World Cup. And this by the way sucks for how we think about the women's national team, because that means we take them for granted, and we shouldn't do that. And they've been incredible. But so much of this is, well, if our men's national team does something in the World Cup, we can feel better about American soccer. And so it's not just we're fans and we're normally following we're just in a normal way following the ups and downs of our team. It now has something to do with our egos, and it has something to do with our desire to see soccer become bigger in this country, because in addition to caring so much about our national team because it reflects back on us in terms of the quality of the soccer played in our country, we are also all boosters on some level who want, again, to be validated by soccer becoming this massive sport in the United States, which it is not right now.
And maybe just as a final note, maybe some of the voices that are the loudest about being anti skipping the Gold Cup, they come from the player generation where there was less options. Like they were playing over here, there wasn't all these different competitions, there wasn't all these different club opportunities, and there wasn't anything else going on. Like the landscape for the player is way more complicated, and the stakes maybe seem higher, and it's not as quite directly A to B.
Yes. Now, okay. So if you want to bring that in, and I'm obviously not a former player, didn't play for the national team. My perspective is that as of a fan. I work with a former national teamer every day, and Eric Ronaldo is on the record, on the radio, saying he gets it, that this is the right move, that Christian Pulisic should not be in the Gold Cup team, that we don't understand how hard it is to go from a European season directly into a summer, play for your national team, never get a break, et cetera, et cetera. That's one ex-national teamer and a National Soccer Hall of Famer's opinion. Another one, you mentioned it, Alexi Lalas. Alexi Lalas is not of that opinion. He thinks that Christian Pulisic should be there because when your national team calls, you show up. You should not be passing on opportunities to go play for your national. Never take it for granted, et cetera, et cetera. Look at what his generation had to go through. Exactly right. There is a generational gap, I think, generally, although Ronaldo is obviously on an opposite side from Alexi Lalas. I don't know. I think I kind of understand the mentality that Alexi Lalas brings to the table. At the same time, you're right, Rob, 100%. Times have changed. The world is different. Maybe we as national team fans have to accept that the international game is just not the end-all be-all anymore, the way it used to be.
Yeah, the rise of the club game, players, being involved at the club world overseas, and then like the rise of the American club too.
Yeah, there you go. So the American trickling out into world football and playing in more prestigious leagues like Serie A, like the Premier League, like the Bundesliga, and there were some back in the day. Of course, Eric Ronaldo went to Germany. We've had players in those places, but the sort of the level that they're asked to play at and the pressure upon them, and the fact that clubs have gotten a lot more aggressive with pushing their advantage, and the fact that they pay the salaries of these players largely, and they're pushing back against international soccer, and you have this battle going on between club and the international game. That's all part of this too.
Join into the conversation by becoming a subscriber and then a member. Morning Kick Around on YouTube. Just a little click of a subscription helps out tremendously. And then, another layer of that is a membership, $3.99. It comes straight to us, helps us become a sustainable program. With a membership, you get priority commenting on the screen. You get early access to videos, and then we'll be setting goals for extra content for members as well, both members on YouTube and the Coffee page. You can support outside of the YouTube sphere with coffee.com/morning kickaround. You can find us as a podcast as well. Search Morning Kickaround on your favorite podcast platform. You can find us on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Or write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We got one more segment to go. Culture Wars up next here on Morning Kickaround. Culture Wars here on Friday's edition of Morning Kick Around. Overseas this week, there was a kind of a very unique, I think your radio station was calling it El Crapico, I came up with it, a gold-rimmed toilet bowl that was Spurs versus Manchester United, 16th versus 17th, going for one of the biggest prizes in world football, a berth into the Champions League. And that made us think, is there an American equivalent to Spurs winning the Europa League? There's a couple teams that won MLS Cup with a not so stellar record. And then there's some stories of maybe some Open Cup wins that saved some jobs.
Yeah, this is an interesting kind of thought experiment, right? By the way, the Eurono League, is that a thing? Did I just create? No, that's not good. Okay, El Sukico, says Ian. All right, I'm not sure. That one's pretty blunt. I thought we were going to be a little more subtle with this, but El Crapico, I mean, sure. Obviously, for Spurs, that felt season saving, right? For Ange Postecoglou, it felt season saving. I do very much like looking too closely, and I'll admit not everybody goes with me on this ride. Looking too closely at how perceptions are changed by winning or by a small amount of success. And if you watch that game on Wednesday, you know that Spurs won because of a weird bundled in goal that maybe Onana should have saved. Brennan Johnson gets credit, but did he even really do much? It comes off. It
was a ghost goal. It was a ghost goal and a very befitting winner to that matchup.
Yes, exactly. It felt like the kind of goal that was going to win that game because both these teams have been so bad this year. But what I was going to say is, like, suddenly Ange is vindicated. Suddenly Ange is, the sun is shining on Ange Postecoglou again after all these days in under clouds and darkness, and having to talk about his reaction to the fans and his relationship with them and how hard it's been, and getting upset about a writer ahead of this game where a writer said that something about he'll look like a clown if he doesn't win it. Whoever doesn't win it will be a clown. And Ange, clearly reading his own press, clearly reading these stories, said, "I'm not a clown, mate. I'm not a clown." I mean, it got to be farce on some level. And then he wins a game on that goal, and suddenly it's like, oh, look what Ange did. He won a trophy in his second season, as he says he always did. Right? It's just,
is this more positive? Like, this kind of, I think there's been a through line with the United coach after the Dutch one, after they won an FA Cup. And so he was vindicated. Ten Hag. He was vindicated at United. They won the FA Cup. And so they gave him more time. And then what? They lasted like 6 weeks into the next
Right,
Premier League
right.
season. So
Yeah.
is Ange in a better place than they were a couple of years ago when they won the FA Cup?
That's a good question. That's a good question. The FA Cup gets you into the Europa League. Winning the Europa League gets you into the Champions League. So Spurs goes into the Champions League, and this is where it's as interesting if we kind of try to port this over to American soccer. There is no perfect parallel. You could have a really bad season in Major League Soccer and do something like win the Open Cup, which DC United did in 2013. They had I haven't double checked the research on whether that is still the worst season in the history of MLS, but they won 3 games all season long in 2013 and won the Open Cup. And I think it saved Ben Olsen's job on some level, although whether DC was willing to send him to go, pay him to go away and hire somebody else at the time and how much money they wanted to spend, I think that was a thing. Maybe American soccer, maybe North American soccer needs a secondary competition, right? Because
a League Cup in North America?
Well, we do have the League's Cup, but it's been kind of bastardized. Well, it can't be bastardized if it was never really a great thing in the first place. But MLS and Liga MX really pulled back from that. So I guess the idea that you can maybe have a terrible MLS season, but save yourself by winning the League's Cup is a little off the table because of the way you qualify for the League's Cup. Because what did MLS do? They split up the League's Cup teams and the Open Cup teams. And we were just talking about the quarterfinals of the Open Cup. And there are a couple of teams in those quarterfinals, including DC United, matter of fact, that you're like, oh, this is the way they save something, right? This is the way they make the season feel better than it's been because DC United is struggling and very well could miss the MLS Cup playoffs. Now, the other part of this, Rob, is something that Ange does not have the benefit of, and that's maybe I finished 9th and I make a playoff and I get to play for a title. That's not available to Ange Postecoglou. Like Spurs knew that the league season was a lost cause months ago. Months ago, they knew that was over, but they still had the Europa League. They still had this thing to hold on to. Even for DC United in 2025, when they've had a bad season so far, and it could cost Troy Lesesne his job and all those things, they are still only 5 points off a playoff spot. They're still only a couple of wins away from being in a position to maybe play for a championship. No one thinks they can win it. They're not good enough, but they can always say, well, we made the playoffs. And this is why that safety net is both an interesting thing from a parity perspective for anybody who doesn't want the league to look over a quarter or halfway through, but also a bad thing in the way that it kind of rewards mediocrity.
Yeah, another team we picked out from North America that kind of overachieved in the cup competition. You mentioned the 2010 Colorado side that beat Dallas in the final. Very low performing team, some oddball names in the team sheet there, but ended up winning and gaining a CONCACAF Champions Cup berth, I believe, for the 2011 tournament, and got a couple wins in the early rounds there.
Yeah, they finished, Colorado did, I think they finished 5th in the Western Conference that year, and but somehow managed to still qualify for the playoffs. I think they did maybe a combined. Again, MLS changing its format for the playoffs every 3 years or whatever it is at this
Hard to
point.
draw a through line.
It's really hard to compare anything to anything else. And so, yeah, you go like, oh, well, Colorado, they finished 5th in the West. How could they possibly have been eligible to go win a championship? They finished 7th overall. They get into the playoffs. They end up facing off against FC Dallas, who was also a Western Conference team at the time. So you had 2 Western Conference teams in a final that they played in Toronto in bad weather in front of people who didn't care. And I don't think that game sold out. It was a neutral venue. I think it may have been the last neutral venue game. Actually, no, that's not true. And this is how much dumb MLS stuff I have in my head. The next year, the Galaxy won the title in LA, but that was a neutral venue plan. It was not the Galaxy hosting the game because they were the top seed. So there was the next to last neutral site game. Colorado played some ugly, ugly soccer under Gary Smith. Matt Kanji tore his ACL, I think, in that game, or some ligament in that game. It was not one to write home about. So yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. You can be mediocre in MLS during the year and somehow win a title, and that feels wrong for a lot of people. And I don't know, if you want to maintain parity, and you do that through the salary budget, but you also do that through the playoffs. If you want to maintain parity, can you also kind of make peace with the fact that you're going to have some not great teams win titles?
Yeah, so we'll see what happens this year. I'm curious with all the teams around the globe achieving early success. We talked about this a little bit on Monday of like who would be the team this year that could kind of make this list. Would it be an Austin, DC that would be have a chance at this title if they end up winning the Open Cup?
Oh man, obviously I think it would be DC. I mean, they're are they the worst of the bunch in terms of teams that have made the quarterfinal of the Open Cup? They're right now in 12th place in the Eastern Conference on 14 points. You've got Austin's in ninth out west. Who else is still alive? Chicago is in ninth in the East. They're 5 points up on DC, so that they're not a candidate here. I mean, we talked about Nashville; they're having a pretty decent season. Philadelphia is atop the table. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, but that's the thing. Like, I don't know if winning an Open Cup, which buys you a spot in the Champions Cup, which is still kind of in a weird place in terms of the way we perceive its importance. Like, MLS teams want to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but do MLS teams center that as the thing that is most important? I mean, or just qualifying. So the way that, say, qualifying for the Champions League as the fourth place team obviously can save you as or continue your run as a manager, right? Oh, we made the Champions League, right? Next year I'm going to coach if DC United wins the Open Cup, gets into the Champions Cup through that mechanism, is that enough for them to say Troy Lesesne's our guy? He should be coaching us in the Champions Cup next year.
Yeah, success can definitely shroud underlying issues. We shall see. Final note on this topic, producer Jenny contributing that Chivas won the 2018 CONCACAF Champions League after finishing 13th in Apertura and 17th in the Clausura. So
That's a
definitely
good one. And Mexico has that potential to do the same thing. They actually do, because parity is a little bit of a thing in Mexico. I mean, look, Chivas is a big club. They shouldn't be finishing that low in the table, but they do because of the short schedule, because they do Apertura Clausura. It's only 17 games. If there's enough variance in there and you don't have a whole season to kind of even out, or 34 games to even it out, that can't happen.
If you are watching now and you haven't hit the subscribe button, do so now. What are you waiting for? And once you hit the button, tell like 3 to 4 dozen friends to do the same thing. Just hit the button. Doesn't cost anything. Don't get spammed, and you help support Morning Kick Around. Get to the level that we are working towards achieving. Next level, membership $3.99 a month. You become a MK Ultra. You become a member of this channel. You get access to the Discord channel, which conversations and channels are growing there. You get early access to videos that we produce here, and priority commenting. You can join in on this American soccer conversation and much more. You got something?
I do want to say, you actually teased this, and I hadn't thought about it. But if there is demand for a promotion relegation manifesto review, maybe that's something we need to produce. And if you sign up as a member, you will get access to that review, probably earlier than anybody else. Maybe we can use that as an enticement. Pro Rel manifestos are an incredible part of the American soccer culture, and we've got a couple sitting in our inbox, Rob.
Yeah, and I feel comforted that I'm not the only one that kind of daydreams and spends ponderous moments thinking about all the variables that could be installed in American soccer landscape.
It is amazing. And I mean this from I mean this as a credit to these people. Amazing how much effort American soccer fans put into putting together their format, their plan, their idea, how it would work. It's not just Peter Wilt, who has been a soccer executive in this country. Fans are putting together these plans. And again, manifesto maybe puts a negative connotation on it. I don't mean that at all. I mean, why wouldn't we be dreaming about this?
Yeah, just fun words, fun words. And if you want to send yours in, morningkickaround@gmail.com is the email address. If you want to follow on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And you can find us as a podcast, Morning Kick Around. Just search on your favorite podcast platform. All right, we have the holiday weekend ahead, so we will be back on Wednesday. So everybody, enjoy whatever you're doing. Be safe, have fun, and until we're back, everybody, enjoy your soccer.